My guest at this time is OpentheBooks.com founder and CEO Adam Andrzejewski. His group is out with a new report questioning how the government is actually using our tax dollars. This time, the focus is on the Small Business Administration, also known as the SBA. And Adam, thanks very much for being with us.
Greg, thanks for having me on the program. Thank you very much for your interest in our oversight report.
Well, let's start with the premise for the report. Why did you decide to take a deep dive into the SBA?
Well, the SBA, their public persona is that they help mom and pop businesses on Main Street. Those men and women, the great entrepreneurs of this country that have good ideas but cannot find financing in the private marketplace. And that's where the SBA supposedly comes in to extend the credit and make the loan. So we gave oversight to that premise, and here's what we found. We found that $117 million flowed into zip code 90210. Greg, that's Beverly Hills, California. We found $120 million over the course of the past 5 years flowed into America's private country clubs, golf clubs, swim clubs, beach clubs, yacht clubs, and tennis clubs across the country. Then we found that $12 billion of SBA lending activity didn't go to Main Street at all. It went to Wall Street, funding large investment pools, hedge fund managers, and investment managers.
How does this happen?
Well, I think there's been a lack of oversight in Congress. There's been congressional underreach toward the executive agencies. And so Congress needs to start asking hard questions of the SBA. For example, why should working and middle-class taxpayers subsidize loans to the wealthy lifestyle? We found $60 million went to plastic surgeon and aesthetic enhancement surgery clinics. We found $20 million went to high-end luxury helicopter companies. We found $70 million supported wineries, and the list goes on and on.
We're talking with Adam Andrzejewski. He is the founder and CEO at OpentheBooks.com. And Adam, I'm guessing, and I don't know if you've gotten this pushback yet, but I can imagine someone saying, well, yeah, Beverly Hills is really rich, and there's a lot of really rich people there, but the cost to actually open a successful business there could also be much higher than it is somewhere else. So it might not be bankrolling movie stars and folks on Rodeo Drive necessarily, but it could be folks trying to just launch a business and they're struggling to do so. So break down what we're learning and what you're learning by the zip codes and who actually is getting this kind of money.
So, for instance, in Beverly Hills, California, and that's zip codes 90210, 90211, and 90212, specific recipients included doctors with practices on Wilshire Boulevard, a high-fashion design school, retailers selling alligator leather belts for $750 and cowboy boots for $3,400. $1.75 million of SBA loans went to a 30-year-old importer of French wines, and $2.1 million supported an eyeglass designer whose frames are worn by the movie stars Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
So what do we know about what Main Street's getting? We know it's not the percentage of the loans that perhaps should be going out, but what impact can we see from your research as to how real mom-and-pop stores are being helped or not being helped by the SBA?
Well, it's a great question. So over the course of the past 5 years, the SBA has lent $170 billion. $170 billion. Now, there's been 230,000 loans, less than 50 grand. But that only amounts to less than $5 billion of a total portfolio of $170 billion. So mom and pop businesses on Main Street, they're definitely getting short-sheeted by the SBA.
What does this tell us? Does this mean that friends of powerful people are getting help that they don't necessarily need from the taxpayer, or is there another lesson here?
So I think one of the lessons and one of the takeaways is that the sheer number of $1 million plus loans is escalating, and it was up by almost $1,100 million loans just last year over the previous year. So that's one lesson. Another lesson is that the Congress needs to hold oversight hearings, because we found when we banded the SBA loans on $1 million of face amount and above, it's now 57%, almost 60 cents on every dollar of face amount lending goes to a recipient who gets $1 million or more. So we actually mapped the 40,000 recipients of $1 million loans by zip code across the entire country. So you can go to OpentheBooks.com, and if you click on the reports, our oversight report, the electronic copy, we've got a link to that map, and you can search in your own backyard who literally won the SBA $1 million loan lottery. And it represents 2 out of every 3 communities where there's a recipient all across the country.
Adam, we just saw in the past couple of days that after the first 10 months of fiscal year 2019, the deficit is bigger than it's ever been before, and it's not because revenues are paltry. So when you talk about Congress needing to do oversight here, it seems like Congress needs to do better oversight just about everywhere. So what's your overall assessment of the job Congress is doing, and what's your advice for where they ought to start?
Well, the budget agreement just may have been the worst budget agreement in the history of the country. For all the partisan rancor, it seems like both parties can agree to spend more of our money, Greg. So you have Republicans who have castigated Democrats as tax and spend, and Republicans have now proven once again that they are the party of tax cut and spend. Both parties love spending our money.
And you mentioned the budget deal. We've also had a series of omnibus and budget crisis shutdown type resolutions and continuing resolutions. In other words, we don't really have regular order anymore. It's been tried. The House did it for a while. They're under Republican control, and then the Senate couldn't get the 60 votes necessary to do it on that side. So we've pretty much just been going from massive omnibus to massive omnibus with a few continuing resolutions thrown in the middle. How do we get out of this rut?
Well, it doesn't look like we're going to get out of it over the course of the next 2 years. This budget agreement is for 2 years, and in order to effectuate it, they do have to pass 12 appropriations bills back to the omnibus spending bills and let the agencies figure out how to spend the largesse that Congress throws at them.
And finally, you have talked before in our conversations about how the American people have got to hold their representatives accountable, demand better performance in guarding the tax dollars and making sure they're spent in a more efficient way. But a lot of times when politicians promise to tighten the belt, they don't get a great response because ultimately they're willing to look at cutting spending just about everywhere because there's usually bloat in just about every part of the government. And eventually you're going to get to something that person cares about. And so therefore they're skittish to support that candidate. How big of a problem is that?
So I think what you're speaking to is the lack of political will and the lack of political leadership. I want to leave you with a great unfolding story. When the president won for office, he put forth an executive order to freeze executive agency payrolls. We just got the payroll headcount information finally after 7 months of wrangling with the Office of Personnel Management. It's the 2018 headcount file in the executive agencies, and every single executive agency is down fairly sharply on their headcount. So the president and his secretaries have been able to cut the blow to the federal bureaucracy. Where they're up sharply is where are in the agencies where the president campaigned. At the VA, the president promised to take care of the veterans. Their payroll is up 18,000 federal workers. And over at the Department of Homeland Security, obviously the president promised to secure the border, and he made promises on immigration. Their payroll is actually up 21,000 employees. Everywhere else, it's down sharply. And so outside of the president's promises, he has cut the bloat in the federal bureaucracy.
So on the personnel side, there seems to be some progress. Folks will be happy to hear that. But in terms of actual program spending, seems like the job is yet to be done. Adam, thank you very much for your time with us today. Congratulations on the new report, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.
Greg, thank you. Thanks for your interest in our work.
Adam Andrzejewski is the founder and CEO at OpentheBooks.com. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.